today we're supposed to speak about the deception in the music, and I think we're supposed to continue next week with movies as well. And I don't know if we don't if we don't finish everything today with music, then you will, I guess, try to like push it into the next week. I don't know. This is like I hate these kind of topics. I'm just telling you straight up. It's not edifying. You're not gonna leave like wanting to, you're not gonna like leave like in an uplifted state or anything like that. Like the most spiritual part of the meeting is now finished already with our hymns and prayer. This is just an ugly subject, and I don't like to speak about it, but it's really important. So we will speak about it. I'm just apologizing in advance that you have to have one of those nights, But music is a gift from God. I personally love music very much, and music is a gift from God. And it's meant, like, in heaven, before the fall of Satan, it was intended to be something beautiful, to express emotions towards God and to praise God and worship Him. And Satan himself was very much involved in music because the angel's job is to praise, and he was like among the archangels. In Job 38:7 it says, "When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy." So like the morning stars is like a reference to the angels, specifically some of the higher angels in. And when they all sang together, it was so beautiful that like the sons of God shouted for joy. And Satan is called the morning star in other places, like in Isaiah 14:12, for example, in some versions. So it says, "How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star." And New King James now they translated it to just Lucifer. "How you have fallen from heaven, O Lucifer. Son of the dawn, you have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations." So, and also there's a part in Ezekiel 28 that speaks about how beautiful Satan was in terms of like his beauty. And it was actually because of his beauty that he fell. Like it says, I don't know if I should read this for you. That part is not necessarily related to music. But it says, "You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. The sardius, topaz, the diamond, beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald with gold. The workmanship of your timbrels and pipes," which sounds like a hint about instruments. "The workmanship of your timbrels and pipes was prepared for you on the day you were created. You were the anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were on the holy mountains of God. You walked back and forth in the midst of fiery stones. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created, until iniquity was found in you. By the abundance of your trading, you became filled with violence within, and you sinned. Therefore I cast you as a profane thing out of the mountain of God, and I destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of fiery stones. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I laid you before kings that they may gaze at you." Ezekiel 20:13-7. So, just to like a little background on the devil. Like I guess the reason I'm saying that is to tell you that if he is so much in charge of, if he's so much involved in the music in heaven, like he, in a sense you could think of him as also like a musician, an advanced musician. So even though he lost his authority in heaven when he was cast down to earth, he still keeps a lot of his attributes as an angel in terms of like being a spirit, being able to go from one place to another, and it includes also like this music aspect. So a lot of what I'm going to say today about the music industry and all of that stuff, I won't blame you if you don't really believe me, because I myself like would not have believed me. Like if I heard myself speak like last year, if I heard what I'm about to say today, it sounds almost ridiculous sometimes, and sometimes it sounds like a conspiracy theory and stuff like that. But it really took a lot of digging. I didn't just prepare this subject like today. I've been watching like annoying, ugly kind of videos and stuff, and reading about it for like maybe 2 years. Like it's related to like not just music, but this is just one branch of music, but like the stuff that goes on in the background of society. I mean, like the hidden, the secret societies and all of that stuff that's happening. I mean, I kind of needed to understand how the devil is at work practically, not just like the devil is out there like tempting us, but I wanted to understand how does it actually happen in the day in day out, like the people that are in charge. So there is so much that we could show you, and it's really never ending. But luckily, thank God that I did find, just very recently, I did find a guy who had made a documentary, and he summarized everything in only 3 hours. And I'm telling you, only 3 hours for me was amazing. This is the short version. He has a 10-hour documentary, and then his short version is 3 hours. So 3 hours is amazing. Okay, but I'm not going to show you all of it. So I managed to pull out like 30 minutes of video. Like I wrote down like, okay, show from this point to this point to this point to this point. But it'll give you a really good background about the history of rock and roll and where it comes from and how did it start and who it's related to and the people that run the music industry, like what's their hidden agenda and so on. And I could give you the sentence, I'll give you this shocking sentence, which is the conclusion of the whole subject, whether you believe it or not, but this is what I wrote it down so I could read it. So I want to say that almost all pop music, like the top of the chart songs, including hip-hop, rock, and rap music that are usually on top in the charts, almost all of it is produced or distributed by almost all of it that is produced or distributed by the big record companies are demonic and are designed purposely to lead the minds of young people to hell. And the mastermind behind all of it is Satan himself. Not just like some bad people, but Satan himself in a very tangible way, which we will show now. And this has been going on since the late 1950s, early 60s and stuff like that with the birth of rock and roll. And there's been a really big cultural shift that happened, especially in America, if you know the 60s and the sexual revolution and the hippie movement and all of that stuff was very much related to sex and drugs and music. And that music, you'll see some of the history. And I personally encourage you, even though a lot of it is ugly and stuff, I personally encourage you, if you really care about the subject, at least watch the 3-hour documentary that I'm going to show you. Go home and watch all 3 hours. It's depressing, it's annoying, but if you really want to be convinced of what I'm saying, just watch it, okay? Alright, so let's see. So this documentary is called They Sold Their Souls for Rock and Roll. And it's prepared, They Sold Their Souls for Rock and Roll. If you write that in YouTube, you need to find something that has 5 parts to it. Each part is 35 to 40 minutes. 5 parts, and it's called They Sold Their Souls for Rock and Roll. Prepared by a former musician who himself also was involved in it a bit, but then he became a Christian and he talks about it. And it's the history of all of rock and roll, including Elvis, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, AC/DC, Def Leppard, Madonna, and all these other big names. So if you need to and again I apologize for having to show you guys garbage in the church but I'll try to okay. So I'm gonna go here.
To brace yourself, because what you're about to see is hardcore truth that much of the mainstream media would like to keep hidden from your eyes. Hardcore truth that MTV, VH1, 60 Minutes, 2020 would not dare show you. We're about to examine the true history of rock and roll. We're about to look at the industry of rock music and those associated with it, and how they sold their souls for rock and roll.
So here they ask some people, do you think it has anything to do with the devil? And they say, absolutely not.
One sings a song about the true meaning of rock and roll, and states, hey, my, rock and roll will never die. There's more to the picture than meets the eye. That's what this rockumentary is about. It's about those parts of the picture that don't meet the eye at first glance, but once they're brought into focus, you start to see the whole picture. And you start to see this very dark, grim picture. As Neil Young continues to sing, rock and roll is out of the blue and into the black. We're about to see about just how black it's actually gotten. Even as Satan deceived the first humans to do their own thing and lied to them, telling them that they could become gods, Satan is using MTV to condition the youth of the world to do their own thing and live as though they were their own gods. Even as this MTV advertisement demonstrates, MTV is Satan's vehicle to reach the masses around the world. Bob Pittman, the founder and former president of MTV, stated, quote, "The strongest appeal you can make is emotionally. If you can get their emotions going, make them forget their logic, you got it. MTV founder Bob Pittman also boasted, quote, "At MTV, we don't shoot for the 14-year-old, we open."
I'm glad he's here.
After the Columbine Massacre, Billboard magazine had Richard Pellegrino, who was a scientist and a consultant to the entertainment industry, write an article for the magazine. Brain specialist Dr. Richard Pellegrino declared that music has an uncanny power to, quote, trigger a flood of human emotions and images that have the ability to instantaneously produce very powerful changes in emotional states. He went on to declare, quote, "Take it from a brain guy. In 25 years of working with the brain, I still cannot affect a person's state of mind the way that one simple song can." This is a horrifying scientific fact when one considers the susceptibility of young people who are constantly having evil lyrics pumped into their hearts and minds. Newsweek, in an article about what they call tweens between the ages of 8 and 13, state that, quote, "Under the best circumstances, these can be difficult years. It is a time of tremendous neurological growth, comparable only to the period just after infancy." Professor Alan Bloom, in his book, The Closing of the American Mind, stated, quote, "Never was there an art form directed so exclusively to children. The music business is peculiar only in that it caters almost exclusively to children." The evil influence that musicians so powerfully wield over their millions of fans is undeniable, and many of them even glory in it.
They take it quite seriously. I look into the faces of our fans, and I see that they've been touched by the Dark Carnival the same way that I've been.
We didn't do nothing. We're just serial killers. Sure, we got a little problem with necrophilia. I admit it, but you came to us first, right? Just keep this in mind. They're playing our CDs when they're not home. They're playing my tapes in your own car, in the tape. And I'm influencing your children.
I'm glad you're influenced by us. See you drugs? Go home and smoke something.
I'm influencing your children.
Listen, if you're ever going to commit a crime, you should do it now because you're still a minor.
Look at this, be just amazed by the power. And I was also aware that you can just say, kill, and there's a certain amount of surge that happens.
Music works in mysterious ways. And once it goes in, you have really no say about what it does to you.
Music is essentially the manipulation of sound. It has the power to arouse, it has the power to frighten.
Billy Joel, looking back on the 50s and 60s, admitted that music was used for subversive sexual revolution.
Power to make people feel profane. You know, all those things they were saying about rock and roll in the early days, saying, oh, it's going to subvert our youth, it's going to make them all want to have sex, it's going to make them all go crazy. They were right. They were right. They were right. They were right.
Everyone in her class, in her school, Spice, everything Spice. And she believes in girl power, and I believe she will be someone very important when she's big because of the Spice Girls, because of what they have taught her. To believe in yourself, to dress how you want.
Is my dress too short? No.
I respect Madonna because she's very expressionless. She's very open about sex, and I think we need to be more open about that in this country. You know, I'm glad them kind of people are famous. I'm glad Spice Girls are famous because look at all the nerves that we've hit.
And I'm influencing your children.
Because of what they have taught her. To dress how you want.
Look at all the nerves that we've hit.
Many of the Spice Girls fans are actually very young and are learning about sexual deviancy before they even learn their ABCs.
Here they're singing our songs, which is really weird. But look, Barbie's name was there, and the kids even knew the lyrics.
They knew everything.
And just what are groups like the Spice Girls teaching the children? First, notice that they are teaching the children disobedience to parents and that they will not be told to keep their legs shut, encouraging sexual promiscuity among the little boys and girls.
keep it in check. Do what your mom said. I'm running the door. Keep it motion, keep it in check.
Echoing Satanist Lester Crowley's philosophy of do what thou wilt in their song Do It, they encourage the children to break God's moral law. The truth of the matter is that God has made beautiful guidelines to protect the sanctity of marriage. After encouraging the children to disobey their parents and break the rules, they encourage them to make up their own rules to live by. In his song Role Model, Eminem sings the following. Spin magazine stated that Eminem wrestles with the, quote, ramifications he knows he has on his listeners. In his song I'm Back, he declares, quote, I take each individual degenerate's head and reach into it just to see if he's influenced by me and if he listens to music. And if he feeds into this blank, he's an innocent victim and becomes a puppet. In the same song, Eminem goes on to declare his desire to go to Columbine and blow more children away. His record label conveniently blanked out the word Columbine to soften the wicked blow. When dealing with the question of how many young lives have been destroyed as a result of his lyrics, he plays dumb and sings. On other occasions, Eminem's true colors come out. Eminem admits that many of his rhymes are, quote, intended to push listeners' buttons.
Kids want to swear just like me. Run around screaming, I don't care, just like me. I think I was put here to annoy the world. Destroy your little 4-year-old boy, your girl.
Let's take a moment to see what it has to say right here.
Rock guitarist Craig Chiquiso says, quote, rock concerts are the churches of today. Music puts them on a spiritual plane.
Says right here, you gotta be saved in order to go to heaven. We will no longer be oppressed by the fascism of Christianity.
Satanist Marilyn Manson has admitted, quote, I don't know if anyone has really understood what we're trying to do, to lure people in. Once we've got them, we can give them our message.
None of those people outside realize how much power is in this one room. Let them hear it!
The Bible actually has a lot to say about Satan's fall and actually his association with music. In fact, open the book of Isaiah and the book of Job and the book of Ezekiel, highlighting the musical instruments as a part of his destruction and a part of his judgment. Because I believe, and I think it's quite clear to you by now, and will become very much more vivid as we see more of the picture of rock and roll, that music is very much part of his deception. Because if he was created to worship, he was created to sing, he was created to play musical instruments and to worship God, what but music would be his most effective tool in deceiving others, especially when music grabs the heart. And he's embedded so much deception, so much rebellion in his music. And since he himself wants to be worshipped, why would he not use music to direct worship away from God, as it so clearly is in the world that we live in, and toward himself? It'll be too late to repent. Gallagher admits that he's possessed by a spirit. He's deceived into thinking that the spirit is John Lennon. Noel Gallagher of Oasis says, quote, if the devil popped up now and said it's a choice, music or relationships, get mother, girlfriend, even Leon, I'd sign up and die fine.
If you watch the 3-hour one, you'll get to see at least 10 examples of the possession concept, and it's very clear.
The Grateful Dead, who were first called the Warlocks before they changed their name, make it quite clear as to whose puppets they are. In the song Friend of the Devil, The Dead sing about borrowing from Satan and, quote, a friend of the devil is a friend of mine. And they talk about being trailed by 20 hounds. In their song, Hell in a Bucket, they declare, quote, I may be going to hell, but at least I'm enjoying the ride. The sad thing is it appears that they're seeking to bring millions of their fans with them. Throughout the earthly ministry of Jesus Christ, he performed several exorcisms, delivering countless people who are possessed by demons. These same demons have been possessing rock stars for the last 50 years to lead as many people as possible away from Christ into hell. In his classic on demon possession, John Nebius writes that those without any prior musical talent might become competent singers under possession. He further states, quote, it may be said in general of possessed persons that sometimes people who cannot sing are able when possessed to do so. Others who ordinarily cannot write verses when possessed compose and rhyme with ease. Alice Cooper stated that he received his name Alice from a spirit he contacted at a seance.
Seance is like when you sit with one of those fortune tellers, Annie, and they...
A ritual.
Yeah.
Alice Cooper has admitted the influences that the Spirit has wielded upon him during performances. He has stated that the Spirit, quote, partly takes over his actions and singing on stage. AC/DC also sings about selling their souls to Satan for rock and roll fame. AC/DC guitarist Angus Young is also admitted to being possessed. He points out that the spirit manifests while he's performing on stage. He says, quote, by the time we're halfway through the first number, someone else is steering me. I'm just along for the ride. I become possessed when I get on stage. He was foaming at the mouth. He was unconscious. Joe Cocker, like many other rock artists, has admitted that when he performs, something seizes control of his body. Joni Mitchell, who is considered the queen of folk rock, also speaks of a spirit entity which has assisted her musical success. Time magazine reported, quote, she deeply believes in a male muse named Art, who lends her his key to what she arrogantly calls the shine of creativity. Meatloaf is yet another one of the many rock artists who admitted, quote, when I go on stage, I get possessed. From all of this documentation, one gets the idea that if all the demons that were possessing all these different rock stars were cast out on the same day, the entire rock and roll industry would come tumbling down to the ground. The punk rock band Suicidal Tendencies, in their song Possessed, state, quote, I'm a prisoner of a demon. This must be my punishment for selling my soul. Van Halen's former frontman, David Lee Roth, didn't want to sing about running with the devil. He also said in an interview about the assistance demonic beings give him when he goes on stage. David Lee Roth said, I'm going to abandon my spirit to them, which is exactly what I attempt to do. You work yourself into that state, and you fall into the supplication of the demon gods. The rock band Queen sings about Beelzebub, a biblical name for Satan, sending a demon aside for them. Bon Jovi has admitted, I'd kill my mother for rock and roll. I would sell my soul. In fact, Bon Jovi states, quote, when I was a boy, the devil took me by the hand, took me from my home. I'm going down, down, down. Duran Duran was presented a Lifetime Achievement Award at the MTV 2003 Video Music Awards. On one Duran Duran album, we find a very, very interesting symbol. Where did Duran Duran get this symbol, and what is this symbol all about? Here we see the same symbol in the Satanic Bible, written by Anton Xander LaVey, over the 9 satanic statements. Godsmack, whose lead singer is a professing witch, have songs like Voodoo and Bad Magic, following Crowley spelling for magic. Rock bands, though, are not the only groups who are involved in Satanism, as many of rap's biggest groups have admitted the same. Eazy-E, along with Dr. Dre, who is considered one of the godfathers of rap music, also sang about his Satanism before he died of AIDS. Here we see Eazy-E singing about Satan offering him power if he would worship him, and about how he asked Satan to get behind him and push him along.
Get me behind me, Satan, and push me along.
All this power I will give thee, and thou therefore wilt worship me, all shall be thine.
In the Church of Satan, Satanists pray to Satan by praying the Our Father. DMX, another of rap's biggest artist ever, also sings about selling his soul to Satan. DMX also sings about the satanic practice of necrophilia, or having sex with a corpse.
I got blood on my head, cause there's no remorse. I got blood on my cause I got blood on my head, cause there's no remorse. I got blood on my cause I'm a nasty nigga. When you pass me, nigga, look me in my eye.
So the reason I showed DMX is because this was made in 2005, and I think ever since then he kind of like repented and he only sings Christian music now, just to show you that there is like hope. Like but he's always getting in trouble like with the music industry. They're always framing him for something. He always ends up in prison for different things, and he like sings about Jesus now, like still with his style, but like you can look him up. But that's not in this document because this was like 2005. And then, okay. So the question is, why would, like, where did these guys get such lyrics? Like, so a lot of them, like you get mentioned before that they received them, and even the Beatles spoke a lot about this. They said that their first 3 albums, they just somehow received them. It was like if you watch the full 3 hours, you'll see the whole picture, but it's very interesting. This is his own story. Maybe it doesn't have a lot of weight because we don't know who he is, but it gives you an idea of what happens with others.
It has to be clear to you by now that Satan wants you, that he's using a lot of different tools to try to suck you in. And the Word of God is very clear. Jesus Christ said, "He that's not with me is against me." The Bible tells us that if you gather not with him, you are scattered abroad, and you cannot serve 2 masters. Either you're going to hate the one and love the other, or hold the one and despise the other. The Bible tells us that we're not to be lukewarm, or be either cold or hot. The reason I can bring this message to you and show you the things that we've been showing you is because God pulled me out of the very things we're looking at. I was involved in a lot of the music that we're looking at right now when I was younger. In fact, in the late 70s, I was in bands like Zeppelin and Rush and Jimi Hendrix, and Zeppelin posters adorned my room. There was barely a bare spot in my room because I worshiped these men like many of the children do today, many of the young people, but also many of the older people. Because people from all ages these days are into rock music, because it's been around since the 50s now. And what we need to realize is what we've been seeing here is that Satan is indeed using these people to destroy our lives. I came into the knowledge of this, not because I was a good person, but because I was actually rebellious, and it slapped me upside the face. In fact, I was rejecting God, and I was seeking to get into the supernatural by means of reading books on the power of the subconscious mind and psycho-cybernetics, and started to program my subconscious mind, or so I thought I did. And all of a sudden, as a result of that, I was bombarded by all kinds of occultic experiences, to where I opened myself up to the spirit world, and spirit beings began to communicate to me. They began to channel different songs through me. And the first song I ever wrote, that was actually my song, was called "My Family and My Soul." And in that song, I wrote words that actually came out of me. And I wrote words that I was falling forever deeper into the hole, and I could not be free, for the devil was grasping my soul. And then the song went on to talk about how I could hear my father screaming, I could hear my mother crying, and my brother dreaming, and my sisters dying. And the song went on to state that at first I was troubled at the devil for the reason. Then the choice had dawned, it would be my soul or that of my family's to be treason. And I could not whether be a devil or a demon. And in that song I made the choice, in my lyrics, to say goodbye to my family. The lyrics stated that I greeted my family to say goodbye. And so I won, or maybe so, and so I left with my soul and began to rock and roll. Pretty horrible song. I didn't want to sell my own soul. I sold my family's soul for rock and roll. And I didn't really believe in Satan though at the time. So for me it was just kind of a cool song. I thought, wow, this is a pretty interesting thing I wrote here. And I continued to write songs, and lyrics that would pour out of me were way beyond my human comprehension and my intellect at the time. My vocabulary would not sustain those words. They would flow through me. I'd have to look them up in a dictionary at that time. In fact, lyrics like treacherous meadows touched by the devil, burdened with calamity, subdued by disease. Lyrics that would encourage people to get into mysticism, Eastern mysticism and the occult. Very many of the things that the demons are pushing through many of the rock stars today. In fact, I was writing lyrics about secret world, about a woman who builds these colorful worlds in her mind. And, in her right hand she holds a wand, and in her left the bishops and pawns. She's the queen who alters time. Serpent tressed rainbows are her jewels. And I had to look up words like tressed to see what they meant. And to find out that serpent tressed rainbows would be, tressed would mean to be woven through the hair. So I was being used by these spirit beings, and when I realized what was going on, and I started to have them communicate to me even audibly, and started to look at the lyrics that I was pushing, and I was pushing concepts of reincarnation, concepts of reaching into your mind for mind power, and I born into a world of probable pleasures of all shapes and sizes. Reaching your mind, you find all kinds of surprises. Color and sound are all around. Our greatest senses remain to be found. I started to realize that my music was pushing a philosophy, but that it was more than me. And then as these spirit beings that I were in touch with began to reveal themselves to be more and more sinister and more evil, and I began to question my lyrics. Why are my lyrics encouraging people in things of Satanism, things of that nature? I started to realize that, guess what? There was definitely more to the picture than meets the eye. There was a lot more going on in the picture than meets the eye. And I started to realize that good and evil existed, and that there were absolutes, and that there was right and wrong. And just as there was good and evil in the physical world, there was good and evil in the spiritual world. And it's at that point that I realized that Satan was real, that evil spirits were real, and my eyes were open to what was going on around me. And it's at that point that in the state of paralysis, which is one of the states of altered states of consciousness that I would get into during that time, as a humming sound was going through my mind, and I would even at times hear loud rock music, and I'd be able to listen to it, to try to copy it, that it was being communicated to me. In the midst of one of my states of paralysis, I cried out to God, and I was freed like that. And a little bit later, it happened to me again. I cried out to the Lord Jesus Christ, and I was freed again. I could never get free. I had to wait till it stopped. When I cried out to the Lord Jesus Christ, I was set free. And at that time, I turned to Jesus Christ. I took all my wallpaper down, which was my Led Zeppelin posters. I started to realize what was going on. And I opened the book, the Bible, and as I began to read it, this book that was a dusty book on a shelf in my house,